that you were going to do your own parallel series to mine. So what we'll do is we'll have the two separate lectures, and because I can break everything down into an infinite micron and infinitely shuffle them temporally in my brain, because that's how all information is organized already, I can perfectly edit together a conversation that does exactly what you're saying. If it was a video, it would look like us putting boards that the other person steps up, and then as soon as that person steps, the other one is putting the board under them. It would literally be us climbing the ladder together.
All right, last thing for me before we really get in it, I think we're almost done with our 10-minute intro. To also help pull Duncan right into the middle of everything.
Yeah, I almost forgot until I saw your it flashed up and Tom, where you put up those numbers. Oh man, that's right.
I'm so glad you made it today, man. I'm so excited. But the last thing that I was gonna say, Tom, was the lecture series, the mapping, the coming together. Oh, I didn't want to put more stress on you the same way how I don't. If you'll notice, if you see the way I work, I don't ask people for things. I often make people want things, or I'll tell people I want things and then wait for them to offer to give it to me.
And I'm like a black hole for that.
Well, I was just gonna say I didn't want to give you more work, but you're the video editor. You're the typer, the writer. You're the guy that put together the manual that OSHA wants to publish, you know?
That's right.
So whatever you want to do with my words or anything, let's do it, because we established our foundation months ago.
Oh yeah.
And now we're just going downhill skiing.
Yeah.
A little bit on the spectrum as well. Yeah.
Once you have trust with another person, everything else simplifies.
Do this, and they, you know,
I'm gonna mute Duncan here.
see this.
Yeah,
I'm right here. It's just I'm back.
There we go. That way. So we're gonna start the lecture. So actually, we're gonna do the. Well, Tony, were you finishing up your thought there? I don't want to cut you off.
I'm all done with my thought. I was gonna say that if it's not gonna distract you, I'd be fine with using the chat as well if Kayla or Duncan wanted to.
That's fine. I can. It was less about the chat being used and more about the way it was being used. Last time that was distracting. There was too much conflict.
I understand. We don't need to talk about it or get into it.
Well, no, it's fine. We can say it. We're both grown-ups. We all learned from it. Nobody
it's
died.
not relevant anymore. I don't think it's relevant anymore.
No. So yes.
Oh, that's
oh, look at that. He's got some quality cuisine there. All right. So here we go. Today's lecture. What the hell? I always forget what I call these things. I have to scroll back and read. Okay. So it's cognitive superposition, also known as cognitive physics 3. So anybody who hasn't taken a physics class probably just shit their pants, but that's okay because I got a diaper right here and some baby wipes too. Cognitive superposition, that's a fancy word for adding things together from a singular source, okay? So if you were doing an art project and you could only draw one dot at a time, you could write down on your piece of paper a little measurement square that this color dot goes at this measurement and this color dot goes at this measurement, and you could fill that whole page by doing that. So in one sense, your picture that you have is an entire page full of a specific number of different colored dots in a specific order. And every one of those dots is its own thing because you can describe it a specific way. This color, this location, this position. But you could also have one formula that could generate all of those dots in order. So that's what superposition is if you're looking at it from an artistic presentation, okay?
When you say formula,
yes.
I think when you say formula, I think code.
Yeah, same deal. Some sort of equivalent relationship. An equivalent relationship, that's the best way to say that. That's what math is. Math is equivalent relationships.
All right, my video went off. I'm going to switch over to my phone and come back on the computer. You can keep going.
Sounds good, thanks. So what that means is that when you have a superposition, you can change the level of perspective that you're talking about. That's what's valuable about it. If you want, you can, and you know the right things, you can find that one specific point every time. And every time you need that one specific point, you have a reliable way to get it. So that's valuable. And that one specific point is the only specific point that can do that, because it's the only thing that can live there, because it's taking up that space. So what happens after that is, say that that's not enough information. If you had to describe the entire picture and you had to use one code and one string of relationships for each one, it would take you 100 years to do a page. But if you're able to find a relationship that all of those little dots share, like say a photo, like say it's some sort of a computer scanner that can break down an image into pixels and code them that way. It literally just chops the picture up and says that one's over 75% black and it's only 4 nanometers wide. So if we just turn it into black, no one will ever be able to tell the difference. And that's what the code does automatically. And it just zip, zoop, copy, done. So that's what superposition is. So my presentation today, my lecture today, cognitive superposition, is I'm going to teach you how to take your individual little square dot piece of paper, your unique coordinates, and I'm going to teach you how to jump from your perspective into the larger equation. So that way you can see other dots that aren't yours. You can see other dots that have never been yours, things that make no sense. Just because you can see them doesn't mean you'll understand them. That's not how that works. See, it's a matter of perspective. If you jump back so you can see the dots, well, you have to jump toward the dot and go there to figure out what that one is all about. So it's a process, and it's a multi-step process. And if you leave a step out, it fails, because that's how math works, right? I can tell you that I got better at math the older I got. And that's because I became less lazy at it. But when I was in high school, I would get, well, I wouldn't show my work. I didn't care. There were things I could do in my head, and I was just like, whatever, here's the right answer. And the teacher's like, well, where's your steps? And I said, what do you mean? There they are. And she goes, well, where's this plus this plus this? I said, well, you taught us on the board that if you do this plus this plus this plus this, it equals that. I thought I was allowed to use that. You already proved it. Why do I have to do it? Of course, that's not, I remembered it. That was what I did. I learned better than everyone else, and they're punishing me for it. Show my work. My work was paying attention. If you couldn't see that, you're a bad teacher. I had nothing to do with this. But so I digress. Man, I kicked myself hard that time. Get my brain back where it goes. Okay. So the larger, being able to go from the larger equation. Yes, it's like a math problem. There's steps. So first you have to realize where you are. Okay. Well, that's a tall order, because where you are is a measurement. And if you're measuring where you are, well, anytime you measure anything, you need something to compare it to. Imagine a ruler that doesn't have more than one line on it. What is that going to measure? Nothing. It measures wherever you put it. And that's the end of the ruler, the end of its usefulness. It can't do anything. So what that means is that the first step of cognitive superposition, the ability to leave your own mental state, learn to perceive other mental states and visit them. And when I say that, I cannot stress enough how immersive that process can be, and how superficial someone who thinks they're doing exactly that can be. Okay? It goes so deep that it is the ability to turn off your own internal emotional responses and turn on the internal emotional responses of the person you are talking to, whether you agree with those responses or not. It is an incredible state of Zen to do it as deeply as it can be done. But it's one of those things where it'll take a minute to learn and a lifetime to master. So if you want to find people who can do this, I didn't come up with this. This is not a Tom original cockamamie theory. I love these guys in the monasteries who did the martial arts training, because those guys were the ones that really took a stab at higher understanding, and they chased it through the body, right? So everything your body could tell you, they figured out. Everything your body could do if you did the right things, they figured out. They made it so that they could control their body temperature by their thoughts. Imagine that. You're too cold. Well, I'll just think the right things and be warm. Tony, you got your hand up. It's a good point for a question.
I recently, so whenever synchronicity happens, I usually chime in.
I love synchronicity.
And usually during these talks, something will happen like, oh yeah, I was just watching that yesterday or the past week. Well, in the last 72 hours, I found myself giving at least 10 to 15 minutes looking at the superhuman abilities of Shaolin monks.
Okay, what did you find?
Within the last 3 days, I consciously made that a part of my meditation time. Now, with that being said, you talked about the body temperature. That's something that I learned probably like 10 years ago about there's a group of monks who they're not learned how to do, learned existed. Not learned how to do.
Okay,
I do not claim.
Okay.
No,
I'll tell you what, you're gonna be my best friend. I'm moving in with you if you know how to do that, and we're not separated until I can do it too.
No, that is not one of the superpowers I claim yet. But the initiation ritual was sitting in the cold snow, covered in a wet blanket, and they had to dry the blanket with their body heat.
Yep, and they did it, and the steam was coming off them.
Exactly. Oh, crazy.
So Tony, I'm gonna throw this out here because if I don't, I'll forget. So this is off lecture, but it's important enough for me to interrupt myself. So sorry, myself. Tony, regarding the ability to raise your body temperature, I can say with, if I had to put a number on it, I would say 85% certainty. Okay, I think this is true to an 85% probability. I can teach you things that were very hard for me to learn, which to you will appear to be parlor tricks, which will be the key to you being able to do that because you're naturally in tune with that way of thinking. For me, it's a challenge because it's opposite of my thought process, but for you, it's an extension of yours. So if I give you the tools that are the path that I know goes there, you would be able to get there way ahead of me.
About 2 months ago in my yoga class, we studied the breath of fire, which is that internal body temperature raising thing. Mm-hmm. And my wife said, oh, you're using your ab muscles to do the inhales, and thus it's raising your body temperature because you're using your muscles. And I was like, yeah, that could be part of it. But, there's still an energetic aspect in where you're directing that blood flow and breath and control.
So let me tell you the key. And I've given you all of the parts of it in previous lectures. So if you really need the nuts and bolts of how a thing I'm summarizing now works, you already have it in the recordings if you really need it. So
if you want to go on the tangent, we can, and it'll be fun.
No, I need to do this. This is important. I need to give you this map because if I don't, I won't remember that I have it. So the way that the subconscious mind communicates with you is through your emotions, meaning your natural emotional responses exist in response to stimuli, like things that happen around you. Additionally, your subconscious mind has the ability to manipulate those sensations to give you clues about things it thinks is important. Meaning, I'm disgusted every time I see this. I'm curious every time I see that. This makes me scared every time I'm angry. Those all point to patterns that a person could benefit from understanding. So it gets muddled because the response to some of those feelings is terrifying and you want the feelings to go away, but your subconscious brain isn't saying, I want you to be terrified. Your subconscious brain is saying, this is the thing that you need to understand, but it doesn't have a better word because its vocabulary is 8. It can only give you 8 feels. And for whatever reason, it decides that terror is the best way to get you to focus on this thing. Because if you weren't afraid of it, you'd never think about it. And that's unacceptable to the subconscious, because something key to your growth and survival, which i.e. your subconscious is a mental construct. So it only understands growth and survival in terms of mental capacity. So anything that it runs into as a brick wall is a literal threat to its growth. So having said all of that, because this is why this is important, because all of that exists, it means it is possible to control the emotional state of the body by force of will, because the subconscious mind can do it. So it's proven possible to manipulate the emotional state of the body outside of the body's responses to stimuli. Where that comes into play is your conscious mind can learn this trick too, because it is a language. It's not an access thing. It's not buried in your brain. There's a password. There's a way we do things here. There's a secret handshake that opens the door. All right. And that language is not a language of thought. It's a language of sensation. So if somebody wishes to control their internal body chemistry, they have to take the steps, just like when I say in superposition, you can't do it without leaving where you are. You have to change perspective. So the first step in this process is to take your conscious mind out of the equation, first of all, and say, what is happening to my body? So you're responding to the world around you is what's happening. Holy crap, that thing happened and it made me feel blank. Those are the most important comparisons a person can remember when it comes to this trick. It doesn't matter what happened. It doesn't matter how it made you felt, except that if you understand what happened to your body chemically when you felt that, if you remember it again, you can remember it intensely enough to make your body reproduce the chemical that it did in response to the situation at the first time. And that's a step, okay? That's not the final resting place. That's how you do it if you don't understand how to do it. You go through a thing where it happened and visit that enough, but eventually you understand the equation. Now you unlock the different thing from your perspective. You say, oh, and then once that happens, when you go back to your perspective, you don't need the memory anymore. You know why? Because at first you only remember the feeling by the memory. But if you practice the feeling enough, you can remember feeling that way. So then all you have to do is remember a thing that you did. And boom, instant access to whatever chemical your body produces in response to that physical stimuli. So if you want adrenaline, combine fear and rage and just summon that emotionally and feed it and feed it and hate it and build it and let it grow in intensity. And then feel your body react to that and feel the adrenaline, feel the combat. Don't feel the fear of battle, feel the rage of battle, feel the excitement, feel the moment where you've broken past your limits. All the bullshit has finally gotten to you. Enough is enough. Hulk smash, and I'm going to go and do this. That's the moment to capture. And the exercise, just let it consume you. Maintain it for as long as you can without corrupting you. Because that is a sensation. It's a suggestion from your body. It is not a decision, especially if it was your suggestion. If you're suggesting it so you'll respond a certain way, obviously you want the response, not to follow the suggestion. That would be silly. It's a step in the process. So then, once you're comfortable with that and you feel that adrenaline, forget all of that stuff that took you there. Forget the war, forget the fighting, forget this, forget that. And just remember feeling that energy rush into you. That is what monks have done for hundreds of years. That's chi. That is chi. That is all it is. And I'm telling you, as deeply as they've mapped it, it goes. If you stub your toe, the faster you can make yourself completely and serenely calm, the faster that pain will go away, because calm releases dopamine. And that's also, no, not dopamine. Calm releases opiates. Everything's chill. I don't need to feel any pain right now. In fact, I'm so chill, I'm going to make it so I can't, because I know what's up. That's what your brain does when you summon that level of calm. No, I can't feel pain if I'm this calm. It's impossible. You must be lying to me, pain, if I'm this calm.
I feel like most people consider, oh, no, here we go. I feel like most adults that find spirituality really just find their first step in self-awareness.
Yeah, so that's kind of what we're talking about.
And from the, no, you're talking about like step 5 comparison to where I'm thinking about, because I'm thinking about self-awareness as step 1.
Okay.
And then after step 1, then you have the choice of trying to do that. The Stoics say, basically, to me, it got dumbed down to you have to be surprised to be angry, or it's a wise man is never angry, or like somebody who always knows what's going on. Like
Howard's
they say that's what it comes to.
Howard's
now that's what. Oh, go ahead, Duncan.
No. I was just throwing smoke. I'm sorry. That was rude, actually.
What do you got, Duncan?
Yeah, you're muted, buddy.
Unmute. Hit the unmute button.
He's going strong, man. I couldn't stop him.
Hit the unmute button, Duncan.
There we go.
That helps, doesn't it? Hey, as you were saying, Tom, I think the point was that you were looking for was the dopamine, which is the body's synthetic, or actually the more perfect form of an opiate.
Oh, is it?
Where opioids are the plant-based, and then now we also have synthetic opioids.
Okay, well, thank you. That was good.
To back up a little further too, when you was talking about getting into that rage versus fear, you want the rage, not the fear, because fear brings flight, which makes you want to.
Hang on. There's another time where the fear could be useful.
Oh yes, true.
So
but
again,
my point.
I'll give. Oh no, I don't want to lose this. This is good.
Right. And that's what the point. My point is that you either one you use, but there's one more step to that, is what wrestlers always do, because that's when they go into a ring, but they practice this when they work out for the going in the ring, when they go, even college, you learn this in college wrestling, or actually in high school or younger, but that's the first stages of wrestling. You learn how to bring that energy up, that adrenaline. But the other thing is, and you see a lot of wrestlers will be doing this, they'll pound their chest.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that brings out the endorphins, which together with the adrenaline and the endorphins.
That's the berserker rage.
Yeah, you get that berserker rage, and it is such a high that there's not a drug on this earth that can compete with it.
And my point is that with practice, you could do that in your brain without doing anything.
Well, part with the endorphins, you almost have to have that physical.
You could. I think that there's a gap there.
Could be. I've never really thought about it, but
so the theory I've been working on, and I will wait until I've proven wrong, is if a human being can do it by accident in response to a thing, a mental creature can learn to imagine that experience so strongly that the body thinks it's happening.
Oh yes.
And so when I say the beating of the chest, yes, you could do that physically, but if you could imagine that sensation with enough, you can even imagine the shock to yourself.
I never even thought of that.
Reproduce that, but that's the point. Is so the negative. The reason I wanted to take a detour about fear is because finding the positive use of fear is something that a lot of people struggle with. A lot of people struggle with, because being afraid is scary.
Yeah, I mean, that's why it is. It's meant to be that way.
It's terrifying. So who wants to be afraid on purpose? What's the point? I'm going to give you the point because it's actually a pretty good one. And this gets a little personal for me, but the reason that I understand fear as well as I do is because it's where I was born. The topic, that's a fair question. Ubang, I'm giving a lecture on cognitive superposition, and I'm finishing up one topic, which may not make a lot of sense coming in halfway, but I'll be transitioning back to the main topic with a short recap in about 5 minutes. So we're talking about ideas and how to combine them in the quantum way. I'm giving a mathematical explanation for how ideas work and how we pick them up from other people. But to go back to where I was saying, the positive aspects of fear. Fear is a tricky response, and the reason I understand it so well is it's where I was born. I had an abusive upbringing early, and it was hard, and it was harsh, and it was magnified because of my autism. Because as bad as it was for a normal kid, I could understand it with 100 times more resolution, and it was so random and so confusing, and nobody talked like I did, nobody thought like I did. That was like growing up in the jungle. I'm gonna mute that background noise there. There we go. So it was like growing up in the jungle, being raised by wolves, except there were no wolves. There was nobody. It was just me bouncing off these things that you walk up and they go pop, 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 and I'm just like, these guys are really scary, and I don't know what they want. And I don't understand, and everybody's looking at me, and I don't fit in, and I don't know what to do, and it's overwhelming. And I was like that for 30 years. 30 years. And my only thought was, being alive sucks because everything hurts. And I don't understand anything. But finally, something happened that was going to happen eventually. So my brain computer, when you are afraid, your focus becomes very, very fine. It becomes laser guided fine, okay? That is what fear does. Fear is a focusing agent. All right. So I have autism, which scatters my thoughts and magnifies them. And I lived in a constant state of fear. So I had magnification on top of magnification. So my scan size, my scan resolution was off the charts. But it took 30 years for me to map enough so that I knew what was going on, because the picture was so slow in building itself. So the reason it was so slow in building itself is because I was so afraid all the time. And I was autistic. And I had ADHD. So can't focus. Can't concentrate. Can't relax. Can't step back and see the big picture, because everything's always right there. Well, funny thing happens when you get that close to anything. When the thing that you want, okay, that's how wanting things works, by the way. If you think about what you want, you will you'll focus on it, right? You have to want something to focus on it. You at least have to want to focus on it. It's in there somewhere. It has to be identified for it to work. You have to have something to focus on if you're going to focus at all. So wanting a thing is the single most influencing factor in a person's life, period. Period. And that gets people into trouble when they want things that hurt them. Like if you have a baked in response from trauma, like I did, where all you want to do is not relive your trauma, that's all you're going to think about. And you're going to get damn good at it. And what happened was I ran from my trauma. I ran in every direction until I hit a brick wall, and I couldn't blame anything anymore. Why couldn't I blame anything anymore? Because I could see it too damn close. I couldn't lie to myself because it made too much sense. And I understood it at such a deep level that it just couldn't. Move on. They got to mute you there, buddy. Sorry. You just got some background noise that would be very interesting if I were trying to fall asleep. It would totally different context. I would love it. Where was I? Train of thought. Yeah, because I was measuring it so closely, I couldn't bullshit myself the way some people can just say, "Fuck, it doesn't matter." Oh, it's close. You know, I couldn't do that because, well, one of the consequences of being afraid is if you see something that you believe, you're gonna follow it because you're afraid of what's gonna happen if you don't. You're running from bad results when you're afraid. So you can't ignore your own advice when you're afraid. Well, that's a half truth. That's the suggestion your body gives you. And the trap you can get caught in, that I was caught in for more than 30 years, is because your body says so, you have to listen. I'm afraid. Oh no, I'm afraid every time. I'm afraid. Too bad. What do you mean too bad? Too bad. You're afraid. Okay, I'm afraid then. Well, now what? Well, you know what happens? The part of you that says you're afraid says, well, I don't know. We never got this far before. You always run away. I don't know what to do. And all of a sudden that you're staring right at it, it doesn't look so bad because it's easy to look scary when you're chasing something. It's a lot harder to look scary when you're trying to walk up and get something that's standing still and is ready for you. It's all about perception there. So when I talk about fear in this context, it's a spectrum, right? It's not 0 to 1 billion. So where fear becomes useful is two ways. One, the thing I talked about with summoning your adrenaline. You can do that with fear. You can do that to the point where as much fear as you have ever felt, you can summon that sensation, get rid of the parts of it that hurt you because you understand it and it was your idea, and take the ability to focus and keep that. Which means the more afraid you can understand, the sharper you can make your vision when it comes to thinking clearly, if you can untangle one from the other, which is why people who have suffered deep trauma and recover are some of the wisest people you know, because they understand fear that deeply and we're still able to crawl out. So that's the benefit of experiencing fear on purpose, is if you can control how much changes, and you can control that too. And eventually you can get it to the point where you just aren't afraid. And it's not because all of those things go away, you still experience all the truth that you had before. It's just all of that truth has made you strong because you took the time to understand how it was true and how you're still here, and you can take the parts of that you want and leave the parts that you don't. So that's my segue. It was off topic, but it was an important topic, and I really didn't want to shortchange it because, Tony, now if you're able to pull from that, I guarantee you, if you can summon anger and summon fear and strip away the negative parts and have those sensations present, you will be heating up your body in no time. Less than 6 months. If you take it seriously, less than 6 months. I'll give you $100 if you can do it in less than 6 months. Hang on. I got it. You want me to get Mr. Franklin? I'll put him up as collateral. You learn how to raise your body temperature on purpose in 6 months, and I will mail you a $100 bill. That's a Tom guarantee. So I'm gonna let you think about that while I get back on topic. All right, so cognitive superposition, learning new ideas. You got it, brother. So what I said was it's small perspective, right? You're the dot on the page. If you're able to step back from yourself and see that there's other dots next to you, then that's the second part. Like, okay, you've removed yourself from the equation. Why is that important? Because you're measuring. You need to measure to compare. So when you step away from the equation and you see other dots, guess what? You're at a stable position. And you know how far it is from you to this stable position. Why? Because you've been in both places now. So now you see the dot that's there. You can measure the distance, and these are metaphorical distances, but you can measure the difference in scale of your position and their position. And that would be a useless measurement if you didn't know your own position, because if people don't understand they're measuring things by themselves, everything comes to them. They can't see it from anything else. There's no perspective. But when a person steps away from themselves and sees how a person approaches them, that's where the magic happens. Why? Because that person is interacting with your dot. You know your dot. You have stepped away from your dot. You are looking at the other dot, and you can watch that dot try to interact with you as you interact with it, which means you can learn what that interaction looks like. If this was if I was using waves, this is how superposition works, okay? It's wave addition, wave interference, all right? If this wave and this wave meet each other, they let their powers combine and become this wave. Always having anxiety every now and then. This is followed of being depressed. Ubang, I'll get that after class. That's an important question. If you want to send that to me in Messenger, please do so I don't forget. Okay? I promise I'll get there. Sorry, I have ADHD, so it's hard for me to keep my train of thought. So don't think I'm dismissing you because I'm actually trying to keep what I was thinking about before. It's a fragile state for me sometimes. So the waves, right? The waves, yes. Okay, so if two waves like meet each other and they're just traveling, they can combine together and both of their amplitudes increase. Okay, have you ever met somebody and they just made you more than you've ever been? This is how that happens. You're experiencing that state because your dot is at that state, right? Your interaction with them combines with you at a frequency level, and you can feel the changes. And sometimes you interact with somebody and those changes are pretty bad. They'll scramble you up. What the heck is that person doing? It's like telephone static. And sometimes you get with a person and it's just like, you have like the most amazing highs and lows. And sometimes you meet with a person and maybe you're all unstable, but this person makes you a straight line, which you've never had before. That's how these metaphors work. So, hey, thanks for joining. We're gonna continue the lecture here. I'll ask that you mute your microphone. We're talking about cognitive superposition. And if I had to describe that, it's ideas that, it's how ideas combine, right? It's how, it's the way that I can mathematically explain how an idea transfers from one person to another and how we can become aware of that and make it work in our favor instead of just reacting randomly to it, which is normally what happens. So back to that. So if person one is this wave here and it travels along, and person two is this wave here and it just travels along, and those two people are traveling in roughly the same place at the same time and they interact with each other, their frequencies, their mental waves are interacting in a metaphorical sense, is what I'm saying. And when one person interacts here, it affects the other person. And then that's where you have these peaks and valleys down here. There we go. These peaks and valleys down here. So like, whoa, that person made me really happy. And then, whoa, that person made me really upset. Or this person made me unstable. That's the natural response we have to mental frequencies of other people. We have brain waves, right? We measure our mental activity in frequencies. And you can tell by looking at a detailed enough brainwave scan exactly what a person is thinking, feeling, experiencing. And if you get detailed enough, which someday we probably will, you could build that and program it. It's tiny enough. It all goes down to yes and no at some level. Once we figure that out, well, they're going to have to figure out that yes and no are the same thing, and both need to be true at the same time until it's time to choose, which is quantum computing, because that's how our brains work. We're quantum computer brains. We exist in a state of uncertainty, right? Yes, no, either or. We can believe in paradoxes. Our brains don't have to be, well, that's how a quantum computer is. It can be anything and is everything until it needs to be something. And that's what people are. These walking collections of experiences that occasionally need to do things. And then they step out of this crazy, chaotic, mind-filled state, and they become an expert at picking up a glass and taking a drink and putting it back down, which takes an AI who doesn't know anything from anything about 250 million tries before it can learn how to walk to pick up the glass, and about another 3 million tries before it learns how to do the job without finishing. But sadly, then it does that better than any human ever could, because it learned every possible way to fail and then had a contingency for it. So that is the other side of that type of learning, not to make light of it. It's a lot longer. It really doesn't get the job done until it really gets the job done. So back to the idea of superposition and waves, right? So if you are aware enough of yourself, and there's many ways to do this, and a billion gurus will tell you how to know yourself, but most of those things are going to come down to, how do I respond to when my body makes me feel things I don't want to, right? That's all of therapy and mental illness, really, isn't it? Summed up in one thing, one overly simplistic thing that people might argue that some flavors of it have it worse than others, but all of them will ultimately agree that yes, technically the definition fits. And if you watch Futurama, case closed, being technically correct is the best kind of correct, mic drop. So that means it's fair for me to say all of that. So my point is, when you can step away from yourself enough to understand what's going on when you react, then you can learn to feel how other people affect that, right? This person made me angry, all of a sudden becomes, this person made me angry because the first time I met him, I looked down on him because he was a teenager, and he never saw past that, and I never saw past that, and this is really my fault, and why did I let this go on for 2 years? Then you know where his anger comes from, and you know the part of yourself that it bounced off of, like when you reacted to it, and you were just like, no, I don't want that, get that out of here, that was your fault. I interacted with you and that happened. It must be your fault. Well, no, that's not how wave addition works. You plus you would have always equaled that. It's both your fault equally. Because if his pattern was met a different pattern, it would have a different addition. So the first part of stepping outside of yourself to understand quantum or cognitive superposition is to recognize that you are in the equation and you are half of it. And because you are in the equation and you can understand that you are half of it, with that knowledge comes the equal knowledge that if you let anything continue to happen, it is 100% your fault. Yes, Ubong is from Africa, and it's expensive for him to listen. So, dude, I really appreciate this. I've got a couple bucks I can send you. Remind me on Messenger next time. I'll get you like a little, I don't know, a data plan card or something. It's fine, dude. I got a few bucks. It would help you a lot. So message me, okay, buddy? Thanks for listening. So when it goes back to brain process here. Okay, yes, realizing you're part of the equation. All right, once you do that, you realize that you can change the numbers in your equation. You can fiddle with things. You can fuck around and find out. Okay, well, that's bad advice on the street, or good advice on the street, I guess, but it's bad advice. No, it's good advice both ways, right? On the street, it's fuck around and find out. You're gonna get fucked up. But in your brain, fuck around and find out, but you're still gonna get fucked up, but it's gonna be your fault and you're gonna benefit from it. So that's the difference. That I think phrases like that actually resonate because they resonate in ways we don't understand until we think about it. Like if I say fuck around, find out, we all know what that means. And that actually is really cool to say, right? It feels good. Fuck around and find out. Like, yeah, I'm gonna tell you. But I think one of the reasons that those phrases stick so well is because it's like a reflection. If you could just think about that exact same combination of words in a slightly different context, you would have something entirely new that would help you, which means fuck around, find out. You understand that usually on the street. What if it's in an office building? Fuck around and find out. You're going to find the liquor? Or what if it's in a fireworks factory? Fuck around and find out. What if it's in your brain? Fuck around and find out. Totally different context if you can change one of the measurements inside it. So that's my point, is when you have access to a good sense of self, you can learn to change parts of the self experimentally, hypothetically, just for the hell of it. Because you have full knowledge that everything you change isn't permanent because you're doing it. It's your idea. You're in control of the process. So you can imagine what it's like to, I don't know, be a Democrat, or imagine what it's like to be a Republican, and really go deep and be like, all right, I'm doing this, and yeah, well, I guess I would feel that way if I did this, and oh man, what would I think if I had that happen next door? And you go this, that, and then when you're done, what you've gathered, if you have been paying attention to what you're doing, is a deeper understanding of a person you previously did not understand, and hopefully a greater appreciation for what they may or may not be feeling at certain parts of their process that may be clashing with certain parts of your process in ways you previously did not understand. And it gives you a visibility of alternative choices that previously felt like irresistible reactions before. Tony, you got a question?
I used to describe myself as an extremist who let the extremes balance themselves. So it was like I was standing on a tightrope and could lean either way I wanted, whenever
That's
I
how we
wanted,
connect.
however the information was
Tony.
most useful.
Tony, look at this. Look at the graph. Destructive interference. You see it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so look at, there's two ways to create destructive interference. You see the magnitudes? One is negative, one's positive. What's the result? It's a straight line. Both of us make a straight line. You do it by being above it at the proper magnitude. I do it from being below it at the proper magnitude. That's why we always meet the way we do. That's why neither of us makes sense, because we are exact wave opposites, because both of us have trained ourselves to seek destructive interference as a leveling agent to level the playing field, because now you can outsmart them.
And for both of our perspectives, we're still aware of all possible angles, or at least only limited by our extremes.
So what I've done, I don't know if this is what you've done, but what I've done is I filled in all of my gaps by assuming the hypothetical opposite must be true, or there is a hypothetical opposite correlation to what I believe. And when those things are simple enough, I could usually understand them, which does not give me an understanding of that truth the way that those people understand it. But I do know that that truth that they understand is equally as complex as the truth that I understand in a different way from an opposite perspective. And that lets me sort of cross-reference the gap. So it's not a perfect method. It's just it's a guessing game. It's a statistical guessing game. I play the odds and get the gist of things the best I can.
There is no perfect. For me, I just assume that I'm always wrong. Or I think if I wanted to think that this was right, if I wanted to believe it, what would need to be true? But then at the end of the day, even if it's not proven true, if it doesn't matter, then I don't say it isn't.
So say the first sentence you said again, because I had something that I felt added to that pretty well.
All right.
Your go-to phrase.
Okay, so if where was I? All right, so if you assume something to be true, start me off again. Where were we?
No, you were talking about what it would take for you to be wrong. That was like your hook.
Oh, right. If what would I have to do to believe you, or if I wanted to believe you, if I wanted you to be truth?
You always assume.
I think what would I need? What information would I need to believe this is true?
You always assume that you're wrong.
I always assume that I'm wrong.
That was the thing I was reacting to. So yes, I think the difference between but the difference between how we measure, all right, it's another measuring agent that I think just shook loose, was you assume that you're wrong and you measure that. I measure how I could be wrong. And it makes different shapes. So it's yours is a, boom, I'm already here. You're like, what's the point? And I'm like, yes, I'm here because this is all the ways I could be wrong. And you're just like, I'm wrong. And you just got the whole floor. So it's like you have the floor and I have the tile mosaic. You know what I mean? Like you built the floor, you could stand on it and you were satisfied. And I'm like, hey, look at all these cool little things. And then as you learn, you pick up the tiles.
I could connect with people.
Yep.
That's all I needed because I had people that I always trusted and relied on to build that for me.
So you wanted to connect with people. I wanted to understand them. That was the difference in our focus. And so you mapped connection and I mapped understanding. And that's why we're finally meeting, because connection is understanding, but there's two halves to that truth.
And now I feel like Duncan fully understands our bomb that we're gonna fucking build. And I think he should be president or something. Like, let's make it happen.
Well, Tony, I can see how we're doing one of these, which is good. And I don't want to burst your bubble, but there's 3 more of those.
Okay.
Like 6 more
every time you say something like this, remember I read the vibes.
Yes.
Remember I read the vibes.
Yes.
So for me, it's never any absolutes. It's always open.
Yes, I'm excited though. Very excited, and it is gonna be cool. But back on topic. That was kind of on topic because it was very specifically on topic. But now back to the general topic, which is how superposition works. By the way, you go from the very specific to the very general. I'm pretty good at this sometimes. Actually proud of that transition, and I ruined it by gloating. So now I guess I always come out ahead, right? Just a little bit. That's the Tom way. You get it and you spend it, right? You just live paycheck to paycheck on that social grace. I like to get away with everything. And people let you get away with a lot more right after you've done something fun than they do if they remember it from a moment ago. Duncan looks troubled. I'm sorry.
Well, not really troubled, but in that same respect, I see, because you mentioned how there's the waves, how they work together. And these are just linear lines, waves kind of that's showing, but in the reality sense, like you're talking, I think another way of putting it anyway, in my mind, it goes like, as they imagine the circle of an atom, and you got the electrons going all around it.
Okay.
And everybody's a different electron.
Yeah, and there's different
everybody's
energy
going
levels.
around, and you just learn how to interact.
There's different energy levels too, and you can only have so many on a certain energy. Yeah, there's relationships.
That's how I kind of see that same thing that you're saying.
I often had a similar thing.
3D.
I was, yeah, that's kind of cool. I wish I could. Duncan can imagine things in 3D, and I can't do that. I'm envious because that's really cool.
Well, that's why I envy you, because sometimes I have a hard time comprehending it on the lower levels.
Yeah, that's.
You have an art to be able to put this to where people can actually understand it.
That's the difference. That's the trade-off. This is computer code for me. Like, this is a computer code language that I'm speaking to all of you. It's just very sophisticated and built off of if-then relationships that have been built from the ground up.
Very similar to M code.
Yeah, exactly. If I'm not being overly optimistic about this is a treatment for autism.
Yeah, I'm finding it
what I have learned is an effective treatment for autism. I had extreme autism.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't know it by my social capacity now, and by my level of happiness and my lowness of neuroticism, which was very bad.
We
It
all
was
run
all
through
just
that.
from understanding what makes me myself. And the way that you do that, okay, now here's the part where it comes. So I've given you the self view. I've given a method of stepping outside the self. I've given observation of a different person who's outside of you. I've given explanation of what happens when those things interact. So now is explanation of what can you do with this knowledge that's fun? What can you do with this knowledge that will make you what you want to be? That's the part that I like, because that's how I got better. That's exactly how I got better. I learned the science of getting better. I learned the science of becoming more self-aware. Look, I am healthy enough to say that this is a gross misclassification of those goddamn hippies and drum beaters who say peace, love, and sandwiches and everything is fine. I don't want to disparage those people, but the depth needs to be there. The depth has to be there. The understanding of why it's important has to be there if you're really going to understand it, at least if you're comparing yourself to how much a thing could be understood at all. So what can you do with it? How can you use it to your advantage? And when I say advantage, I'm gonna throw this little disclaimer out there. People have different attitudes and assumptions about power. Okay, people have, from my perspective, strange connections about what power means and what too much power is, and what it means to have too much power, and how much power another person should have, and power is this and power is that. And for the purposes of these lectures, let's say, the official position on the definition of power from the perspective of the one who is educating, my definition for power is a thing that has the potential. Oh, you bastard. How dare you bomb me on the way out, Tony? There we go. I got the reverb there. We're good. Fuck, what was it? A thing, power. Okay, power is a thing that has the potential to change another thing. That is what power is. Power is potential energy, potential for movement. It is not ascribed a moral definition. The official definition for what ascribes morality to power is free will for the purposes of this lecture. So that's why I'll use the word power without a moral connotation. It's not assumed. You provide the morality. If power corrupts, it is bad for you to have more of it. If power would not corrupt you because you are limited by the amount of good that you can do simply by your resources, then it is good for you to have more power. You're going to use it to help other people. You're going to use it for good reasons. You're not going to use it to hurt people. That's what power is.
I think
Power,
Duncan had something for you.
Power is, nope. I think that's Duncan's got this little, I'm not going to make fun of it, but it's you got the boogie going on and I love it. You look like an excited, look, I know it's unintentional and I'm not ragging on you, but it makes you look more excited than you are, and it does good things for my energy.
Yeah,
So,
well, it's also part because it's an excess of energy in my point that causes me a lot of pain.
I think that's what
I break into
geez.
pain.
So I'm waking up the energy and you're responding and I'm feeding off of it. So we got this sort of thing that's going on. Well, I don't know, turn my cam off if I'm going to make you dislocate your neck or something. I don't want that. But back to so what can you do with it, right? How can you increase your power? How can you make it so you have more potential than you did before? Well, it's by understanding wave addition here, right? Combined wave. Other people have different mental states than yours. And if you understand your own mental state enough, you can change it. You can alter your brain waves to what you want them to be. That's what being self-aware is. It is. It's being able to change your mental state. Being able to be like, you know what, it sucks to feel this way, so I'm not gonna. And too bad, however, I felt about that a few minutes ago, because it's genuine, because I figured out how to do it. And I'm not going back. That's what being self-aware is. It's permanent. It's nice. I recommend it. Haven't tried it. Try it just a little. Be on weekends. You can always go back if you'd like to be less aware. That's a lie. You can't. Once you see it. But that's the thing. Once you see it, it actually, you're like, it's never seeing it for the best. It's never seeing it for the worst. It's seeing it for the best that it could also be if you weren't looking at it like it was the worst. It's a relief. It's a balance understanding, and it levels you out, right? Think about that. You need a straight line, right? If something's got you tweaked up in one direction, you need the opposite of that thing, whatever it is. And if you can find the opposite of that thing, you'll level out. I'm so scared of this thing. Why? I don't know. Well, I'm going to think about this thing until I'm not scared about it anymore. So I'm so scared about this thing. Well, I thought about it a lot. Now I'm not scared of it. You understand everything it means to be scared of it and not scared of it. You're done with it. It's irrelevant. You fully mapped it. You got it. Game over. You can find any answer on that line because you looked at all the answers. That's cognitive superposition. So you can reflect yourself off of other people if you understand how you interact with them. And because you know what you feel like, you can use yourself as a punching bag and let them interact with you however they're gonna. You do this. You put yourself out there. You don't move. You don't inject yourself into their wave. You're a neutral force, right? Because you understand yourself. You're just reacting to them. And then you sense that difference because it interacts with you. They make it. It's theirs. It's unique. You didn't see it coming. So you're self-aware, right? You know that you're here when it goes from here to here. You got your spot on the scale. That person interacts with you and they move you from here to here. You know how big that distance is. You can map that. Find a few different people. Get different spots on the scale. Find the top and the bottom. That's how you grow a thing. What's a thing? Anything that you can creatively imagine and contest. That's the limit. The limit's your imagination. The limit is the question that you can ask and what you could do with the answer if you knew you had it. That is the power of creativity. That is the creativity algorithm. Go ahead.
The way I put that usually is what could you do or what would you try if you knew you couldn't fail?
Yeah. And how could you try to fail in as many different ways as you wanted and turn those failures into successes because the failures were intentional? Because you were thinking about failure the wrong way. That's how to weaponize that. You turn one, Musashi, the writer of the Book of Five Rings, from one thing, no 10,000 things. He said this, it's wise. So anytime somebody gives you a method that works for them, you have the benefit of outside interaction because their finish line is now your starting point. And you can say, that's amazing. What if you did this, that, this, that, this, that, and that? And then you become the student. Why? Because you might not understand it yet. So you let this person explain their answers to what if this, that, why, this, that, why. And you listen and you map their response and you build an idea of it that is theirs, not yours, not your reaction to it. It is simply theirs. And once that is finished, now you know how to interact with that. And you can challenge all of the things that are legitimately still outside of bounds. And two things happen. The person who is sharing this with you reacts graciously because you have answered questions that they have been asking themselves for a while because they understand the limitations of their own ideas and it frustrates them. Or you have anger because this was a great accomplishment and it wasn't sufficiently validated, and now it's already being challenged as unstable. Both responses are natural responses, which means you can understand both of them and map everything in between if you can keep yourself out of the measurement. And all you have to do to keep yourself out of the measurement is to be self-aware with how your interaction is affecting the person you're communicating with. Their reception of your position, not your words, not your nomenclature, not your definitions. Their reception of your message overall from a feelings and understanding sense becomes the primary focus of maintenance. Everything is measured from that. That's how it's done. That's how I did it anyways. Maybe someone else has a better way. There's usually a better way. That's the handbook for how people with autism do that. Here's how you can do it. So people with autism, if they're like the fleas at the circus, all right? They can do the most amazing tricks, but they can only go so far at a time because their dimension is small. But one of the fleas learned how to pole vault, and that was me. And that's kind of what I've been doing, is I've been covering greater distances over time and extend that over 30 years because that's the amount of time it took for it to bear fruit. Finally, the answers came and my life got so much easier that as much as I suffered was as happy as I could be. I reached that limit. And now the only time I cry is when that limit increases, and it only needs to increase in one direction at a time for you to be able to understand the intensity of things that make you cry. Crying is your body's response to emotional overload, right? You don't know what to do with it. You just blubber it out. You've surpassed your limitations, okay? Well, crying is like anything else. It's like anything else. If you do it, you get better at it. And for some people, getting better at it takes more to make you cry than it used to, right? It used to matter that my Nintendo wouldn't boot up Super Mario 3 even after I blew on it. Like that was the end of my world at one point. And maybe I even got a little upset about that. And if that happened to me now, I would just, I don't know, be like, all right. And that's how crying works. You build up a tolerance. But that's all, it's not a tolerance to crying that you're building up. It's not a tolerance to sadness that you're building up. It's a tolerance to the intensity of that emotion that's being built up. And that can go in multiple dimensions. You can expand your emotional capacity by exercising in any one direction, because its capacity is what is the maximum thing that you can experience. So if you want to be able to expand your emotional capacity, try to get mad. Focus on just getting mad as you can be. Yeah, it makes me angry. And then right before you're going to halt out, you say, okay, that's as mad as I can be. And maybe the next day you do it again. You just, I'm just a little bit, I got it more today. And then, and then the next day, and then like a month later, you've changed. You're no longer this raging, silly cartoon character of a barbarian that needs to beat himself up to go into battle. You are this scary, stone-faced thing that just is so bored with pain that it's not even caring anymore what's going to happen, because nothing has ever happened that it hasn't been able to survive swimmingly. And that's one direction. That's what anger will do. If your sadness, your capacity to process loss, how much of yourself exists outside of you that is important to you? Those things change. Those things can change. They can change for better. They can change for worse. They can change unexpectedly. They can change in ways that devastate. I had a fire a year ago, and that changed my life quite a bit. I'm in a temp house right now, and My wife's not too happy about that. It ended up being a good thing financially overall, but there was a significant sacrifice to our personal life, out of your home for a year. But that capacity for loss, if it's challenged, why do I feel that loss? Where does that come from? I'll give you my answer. My answer is, if you ever feel like another person has left you and you feel an extreme sense of loss, that means that you never understood that person outside of their interaction with you. It means that you were never self-aware enough to experience them without them, even by memory, because you couldn't measure yourself any other way. You couldn't summon the feeling on purpose because you couldn't self-locate. You needed the other person there to bring it. They were the thing. They were the chocolate, you were the peanut butter. They were the natural occurrence of a thing you could learn if you were thinking about it. But if you get so caught up in existing in that moment because you don't have to think about it and you get all of the benefits, you can leave that knowledge behind when the thing that provides that state leaves. That is loss. That's why your parents hurt the most, because they had the most potential to help you. Why? They've lived longer than you and they're supposed to be on your side. And if they're good parents, they'll be on your side so much that they would hold nothing back from you. No knowledge, no wisdom, no resource, no time commitment, no anything should be beyond their grasp. That's the potential of a father and a mother. Different angles, different perspectives, different functions. Which means that those people are the best ones to teach you things you need to know. Things you don't know that you need to know. Things that you wish you didn't need to know. Things that they know you don't want to know. Things they know that you're being stupid about because they made the same mistakes but they got out of it. And you're just going through a phase. And they've seen it beginning to end, but you're still too young and stubborn to think about it. Why? Because they were too young and stubborn to think about it then. Why? Because they remember what their parents did, which was listen to them, let them fail on their own terms, and then come back in as good parents and pick up the pieces without recrimination and help them on their way to do it the way they should have the first time. That's what a good parent does. A good parent will let their kid fail rather than alienate them. Period. Because that trust is the greatest potential a parent has. It's sacred until it's violated. And kids know that. And kids know when it's been violated because kids from broken homes suffer on average more than kids from loving families. And I hate that. I went through that. I saw that, not only in my house, but the house of kids. I went to other kids. You hang out with the broken kids' families, right? Oh, it's your turn to watch them. That sort of thing. I saw it, and I can remember now the kind of lives they led because of the parents they had, and what that did to them, and how it followed them, and how they didn't have a chance for a long time. And that made it hard for them to admit they were wrong because they had been so wrong. And that was bad. That meant a total destruction of everything they believed was true. And they had to start over. And they feel the loss of time because they know they're mortal creatures. Why? Because mom and dad didn't do their damn job, which was put the kid first, no matter what. I think there's nobody out there that could say put the kid first no matter what needs to be important. Kids can't do anything. They're stupid. They're small. They're weak. They're slow. Some of them aren't, but they're not there yet. And that's because that's how humans are. That's not how we work. We understand that. We put systems in place to protect them while that's happening. Special hospitals just for them, special programs to make them grow, special programs to teach them, and then hopefully get jobs or hobbies or whatever. But there's so much investment in kids. But the one thing that you cannot substitute is the one or two people a person is supposed to trust because you were always there every time. You made everything, your whole life was them. They knew that dad made the house happen. They knew that mom kept the house clean, or the roles reversed. You know, that happens all the time. My wife and I have oddly specific things. We have a competence-based hierarchy in this house. So whoever can do the thing better is in charge of the thing. And that changes sometimes, and we can list each other for help. So management and soldier become interchangeable. I personally, that's a good way to operate a house, because nobody's ever stuck being in charge of something they're genuinely terrible at. But tying all of that back in, excuse me here. Tying all of that back in to wrap up the topic of cognitive superposition, which is the mathematical metaphor of how to change your own ideas in ways that you can direct, if you understand what questions to ask and how to respond to them. And I'll kind of review the whole thing just from beginning to end now, to tie it all together as very broad strokes. So first, cognitive superposition is the concept that there is a single equation, a single set of code that can generate a predetermined outcome that might be comprised of hundreds of thousands or even millions of specific coordinates, like a photo in pixels. So that is to say that each pixel is unique, and each pixel obeys a relationship to a single unifying code or source that will always produce this same collection of pixels, which is the same number of solutions, the same way every single time, each one in its distinct location. That's the cognitive superposition. So what that means is superposition is what I just described. That's that's what I just described. Superposition is the transition from the small discrete solution to the single equation. That's superposition, is knowing that depending on your perspective, it could be that. It might be that specifically in this instance. Hypothetically, it could be all of them, because hypothetically means you can go up to the master equation and plug every value in for every variable and get every answer. That's what hypothetically means. If there's a mental picture out there, there's different views of it, and it's mapping a larger picture that is the picture of all of the views from their unique perspectives and what they share more specifically. When two perspectives share the same perspective, people really connect when that happens, because it's a tranquil feeling every time when we interact with people because of these wave-like interactions. So back to the superposition idea cognitively, that our brain waves have a unique signature that's linked to our experience of reality in the moment. Now, whatever that may be, it makes the brain wave. We can represent our brain waves using speech and tone and gesture and emoji and whatever damn thing else we want. And we can send a wave that kind of represents us out into the ether, as it were, to interact with somebody else who exists as one of these stable brains. So the problem is these interactions, it's kind of like two people passing through each other, right? And when neither of those people understands that they're a unique wave interacting with another unique wave, they're both just going to experience whatever they're going to experience, and it's all by accident. Whoa, that person made me feel angry. Whoa, that person made me feel really happy. Oh my God, that person, I can't even look at that guy. And it's all a surprise all the time. And the most angry people seem to be the ones that are the most surprised that people have different mental brainwaves than their own. What that is that's a fear response to that jolt. Oh, it's going to change me. It doesn't have to change you. It only has to change you if you refuse to see yourself. That's the way out of that. So yes, if you refuse to look at yourself and why you react the way that you do, that's impossible for you to change if that is your original perspective. It just won't happen. So the interaction, right? So that's the first step, is realizing that this interaction is happening. The second step is becoming aware of your part in that interaction, because those outcomes only happen when the two of you meet. It's very specific. When waves add, the answer is the answer. And unless there's a copy of you interacting with a copy of someone else, and it's the exact same thing, your two interactions are as unique as a fingerprint, because both of you are as unique as a fingerprint when it comes to the way that you understand reality, because both of you have led different lives from different visual perspectives and different sensory perspectives. Even the difference in height of several inches would completely change a person's view of the assumptions that they make about the world around them. Male or female would change the assumptions as well, the things that we value, the things we look at. So it is becoming aware of how these different perspectives can influence those wave interactions. So the first step, so then two waves colliding, realizing you are part of it. Now you can observe yourself and maybe still experience it naturally, but now you can measure it. You can say, normally I feel like I'm right here. And whenever this happens, I feel like this. And whenever that happens, I feel like that. And now all of a sudden, you understand it. And if you wish, when it happens, you can just produce the opposite amplitude and level it right out. It's just a response. Boom, 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 boom. Which means that by experiencing anxiety on purpose, not by accident, by experiencing anxiety on purpose, you can learn to understand it and cancel it out. That's what therapy is. A therapist helps you do that. So that's the next part of it is you watch how things affect you and measure that. When you learn how to measure yourself, you learn how to change yourself at different levels. Doesn't that make sense? If I am here, this person always, if I'm here naturally, I know that. And I know that because I know myself. And this person pushes me here. Now I know myself here. And because I know myself, I can also understand myself here. So now I know myself in two different directions, which means you can understand any gap between those directions now, because that's how waves work. You are an amplitude. So if you understand that, you can find people that are the opposite of you and learn to understand them as they understand themselves. What's happening, if they're honest, if you can learn how to test their honesty, and you're smart enough to communicate with them in ways that will make them share this kind of information with you, because it's trusted information sometimes, a person's unique perspective. So if you are trustworthy and trust is given to you, which is everybody's challenge to solve on their own, I guess, they will share their perspective with you from their perspective as they believe it without reservation. And they will allow you to ask clarifying questions to make sure that you understand the limitations of what they mean and what they don't mean. And that they will be fair with you when you uncover a limitation that has them expand their own idea. And then both of you can map that together in the process. That is the potential of such a thing. So what I've just given you is a map of how to do this. The limits of doing this with somebody who doesn't also know how to do it is you're going to be stuck wherever that person won't go. Meaning you're interacting with someone who is not self-aware. You will reach the limits of a person's self-awareness when they no longer wish to go where you've already been. That's how I know when people haven't thought about a thing. That's how I know when somebody doesn't understand a thing. I can't even get them to think about it. Why? Why do I know that? If you won't think about it, you can't possibly understand it, because, well, I know how time works. You have to observe a thing before you can understand a thing. Thinking, it's a verb, it's a moment, it's an action. It comes first. That's how I know. So you can use this knowledge then to change yourself and say, what if I believe this? how does that interact with that person who always makes me feel that way? And so that's the limit of that. That person will tell you, nope, don't believe it, don't care, won't talk about it. If you press the issue, they'll ghost you, whatever. They'll find a reason to call you self-destructive and manipulative. I've been called the devil one time for asking a person to hypothetically consider the opposite disposition. Ironically enough, I was defending religion. How I became the devil defending religion is beyond me, but I'm sure he had it perfectly mapped out in his head when he said it. So you'll have to find and ask him. He might be on 4chan, possibly Reddit. I don't know. That's all I have to go on. People have done more with less. Yes, he's so muted, but his body language is speaking volumes.
That's exactly what the devil would do. That's how we know. The devil would claim to be doing exactly that.
Because nobody looks behind the curtain. No, everybody looks behind the curtain. Nobody looks in front of it. And that's the message of the fool. So you're just calling me a fool. You're trying to call yourself angel instead of the devil, which is exactly what the devil would do.
Hey, I've shown you my spirit demon, and the Heyoka that I truly believe in and the omnis that I claim to be. I don't think the devil's that bad of a guy if you read the Bible that I did.
There are some who say that the devil's a metaphor for self-discovery and questioning things, and we'll leave that for another day. I actually have a lecture series I did, what I think the Bible means. That I guess about 6 hours of material on my ITME page if you wanna look that up.
I've skimmed through that footage on YouTube. Don't waste time in this lecture going there.
No, I'm gonna plug my stuff. I'm forward thinking.
Oh, okay. Okay, I just didn't want you to be distracted from me.
Oh, no,
All right.
You were an opportunity. I'm gonna exploit this.
In that case, I have watched some of the footage and it is amazing. So go check it out and see for yourself if you like it or not. And if you disagree with them, let me know first, and then we'll get together, and that way we'll win. We'll finally get one over.
Man, I
don't even have to agree with you.
I just got schooled in how to be a hype man. Like, you should drop that beer right now sideways like a microphone, dude. That was some brilliant hyping. Wow.
It's just genuine, man.
No, I get it. No. That was a magic trick.
I've actually seen the footage. I've actually clicked on the links. I've actually heard you
I get it.
Listened.
But your presentation, man, like if you were Tony Hawk, that would have been a 720, okay? Like I can grind a rail for like a foot and then hit myself in the crotch. And I'm proud of that because it took a long time to get that far.
All your references are from 1992, I'm gonna say, or like earlier.
So because I didn't have memories growing up, I actually mapped most of my childhood by pop culture references. It's kind of sad, but it's what I had to work with. Now that I think about it,
have you seen Community?
That was hang on, Tony, I'm so proud. That was a live thought. That wasn't a canned response. Like that just kind of hit me. Say that again. That just hit me for a second.
So
I built my memories
92
around cartoons.
And the vibe behind that wasn't actually 92. It was that time frame, which you caught right away.
I got the unifier. The unifier was I didn't have a sense of self, so I was drawn to imagery that produced paragons of obvious virtue, like cartoons, action figures, superheroes, anything good, powerful, noble, etc. Things I could trust that were good that I could look at because I had no sense of self. So I created this core construct of if I chase these general ideas, things will work out well for me. And I used my dad as a pillar because he actually did that stuff at like the mortal everyday person level. So I had the view of the ideal and I had the view of its execution and in a very quiet way. And that allowed me to hold values without a reason other than everybody else thinks these are good. And then using those values, I was able to reach out to things because values are good. They do produce stable things. And I was able to produce a stable enough life by following the right values that my dad had already figured out and given to me, that I was able to be stable enough to fix the things that were wrong with me. That's amazing, Tony. Thank you for giving me that. That was previously on, I didn't understand that about myself before. So thank you.
I cannot wait until Duncan knows what to say, because I feel like he vibes with me. And when you guys have talked and what you've already said about him, y'all are already in the astral realm together or
I
the
can tell you
quantum realm
what
together.
I can tell you exactly what Duncan's doing. He's just updating his maps. Am I right?
That's one way of looking at it.
Yep, he's just filling in pieces, testing it against things he already knows. Those little nods and reactions are like checks out, checks out, checks out, checks out. I'm passing tests that he's doing in real time to make sure I'm not a bullshitter, which is not an any sort of thing, which is just what the autistic brain does on its own.
And
Like you,
because of my age too.
yeah. Oh, yeah. And it's exponential, by the way. Autistic growth is exponential. One of the luckiest guesses I ever made was to focus very heavily on learning how to learn faster.
I never did figure that one out.
I maxed the shit out of that early, and it's exponential.
I think it's.
I'll give you the secrets one of these times. I got to wrap up for Tony here. 4 minutes left. But yes, I learned the learning algorithm early because I learned it from video games. Video games had these things that kept reappearing all the time. You can buy your action units, or you can buy a resource generator, and you can delay action units, and you can invest in your economy first. And so all of these games, and I kept saying economy, obviously, minimum action, maximum economy. And that if you study game theory, that's the answer. And if you watch real-time player strategy games, like StarCraft 2, it's a balancing act between military and economy. You can win economically if you can survive on a meager force compared to your opponent because you max out your resource generation. Well, in the world, most of us have a stable enough environment that we don't have to spend anything on army. We can spend everything on resource generation. So you can learn different skills, or you can reinvest in upgrading the machine that gives you the skill. Studying that, how is it constructed? How do I learn? Why do I learn? What can I do if I understand the answers to those questions? What else can I figure out about learning? How is information processed? Where does it stop? Where do I get stuck? Is that me? Is that the limits of the idea? These are all questions you can learn how to test the answers for. And that's how that works. But then to finish up the topic is, when you become aware enough of yourself and your interaction to others, you learn how to greater measure yourself because you can reflect on specific parts of yourself with other people. So long as you always make sure to understand exactly where they're coming from. And the way that this works is only one way. You become the student and learn the words that they will agree with as true, that you also agree with, adequately represent your understanding of that. So you have to come up with a guess that is honest to you, but also accepts that you're not mapping what you agree with, you're mapping what you understand. And if he says, no, that's not right, you have to say, why is that not right? Can you show me what is right? Rather than, well, why isn't that right? No, that's not what you care about. That's not what you should care about. If you're self-aware, you already know why you think that. That's a reaction. That's a reaction to prompt self-awareness. That's what you're trying to learn by having that reaction at all. Is, oh man, you probably shouldn't be doing this, and here's why. And if you could only understand this, you wouldn't have that reaction. That's why you can understand both sides of it now. And then you can use everything in between. So that is the potential of understanding cognitive superposition, is if you can identify your location, if you can step away from your location, if you can observe another known location interacting with what it thinks is your previous location, you can watch it interact with you from a top-down view because you learn to separate yourself from yourself. You can go visit their point then and experience the journey and the wave amplitude that matches the one that you know must exist. And you can try to find that because you've stepped outside yourself and observed it first. You can experience it emotionally and then combine those two understandings together to fully understand what it means to add their potential of their idea to the potential of what you already had inside yourself. and you are mapping that change. That change is the goal, which is why you listen to their cockamamie schemes about why everything you disagree with must be right, and here's how exactly. That's the benefit, but you have to suffer the beginning. You have to listen to their bullshit and their stupid
I
explanations
like that
don't
part.
make
I
any
really
sense,
like that part.
right?
That part's the fun part for me.
Yes,
Like, cause I feel
yes,
like
me too.
I don't need more yes men.
We're both
I need more
assholes.
people I disagree with.
Yes, we're both assholes, but we're happy about it, and we try to spread joy as much as we can. So we got good at throwing pies, good enough that people asked us to do it again. And then once they ask us one time, it's game over because now we have them.
I think I could market myself as the nicest asshole you'll ever meet.
You have to
Because right
bleach
now
it.
I'm the toughest coach you'll ever meet. That's how I
Hey,
market myself, as I'm the toughest
Tony,
coach you'll ever meet.
Tony, are you willing to bleach?
Bleach.
Look, if you're gonna market yourself as the nicest asshole, you're gonna have to bleach. You're gonna shave too.
I was going to say,
Look, we can go to almost the
That's-
nicest asshole. We can step it down just a hair.
That's
That's
what
too
filters
much.
are for. Filter. Snapchat filters.
Snapchat filter. He's just a little cat starfish.
Just to take a step back, before I was like, that's right, opposed to your right. When we're talking about
Yeah.
getting people to accept information and whatnot.
the reason why I'm laughing so hard is when Tom said about the bleaching, that's the first thing that popped into my head.
I knew it
Got to
would be.
bleach the asshole.
Yeah, I missed it.
Nice thing about it though is because of your cultural heritage, it'll really pop.
Yeah, you would. You'd be
In all
shining red.
photography, look, in all photography, the goal is to create believable contrast, and you have the natural advantage, which we could enhance with computers. We can go a step beyond what is already a natural benefit. Anyways, to finish the lecture.
You
You have
are
to-
allowed to edit and make the meme.
I absolutely, I'm gonna abuse this footage, and I'm gonna add a laugh track too. And it's gonna be made up of Tony's laughter that I've gathered from like 8 sessions. So it'll be an all Tony laugh track that plays at inappropriate times.
Oh, that'll be great.
So anyways,
Oh, that's gonna make me laugh so hard.
and that's gonna be a setup for my jokes now. That's gonna make me laugh so hard. Ding! Oh, here comes a joke. Like it's like the 3, 2, 1. That's gonna make me laugh so hard. Build the suspense.
You could cut it and give it to me for DJ sound effects too.
Yeah. Oh man, we're gonna do some good things with this footage. So, anyways, to the last part of the summary. Sorry, I have ADHD and I go off on interesting tangents. So it's your problem. I'm already here. My problem too, but I can't do anything about it. So yes, diamonds and such. Look for them. Bad transition. Okay, so I'm trying to like switch the channels back. You know, I'm getting a lot of
It's hard to
static
do.
here. It is. All right, but I got it. Okay, so you listen to their cockamamie idea, and you have the capacity to understand it differently than you do. And you have the self-control to let that idea exist hypothetically as a valid perspective when you are considering what this person understands. So your goal is specific. It's bounded, right? It's not everything in the world. It's not what you believe. It's not what anyone else believes. It's not what's right. It's not what's wrong. It's what that guy believes. And if you could draw a bubble around what that guy believes and point to it, that's what you want. That's what you want to know. They're like Pokemon cards. That's why Pokemon is interesting. That's why fetch quests are interesting in video games. That's why 5-person Voltrons are interesting. That's why Power Rangers are interesting. That's why Captain Planet was interesting. That's why teams are interesting. It's how it works. And we recognize that on a very deep level. And the more that you can understand that by using a little bit of math and measurement, well, that's what people do. We make measuring instruments, thermometers, we make seismographs, we make X-ray machines and gamma ray machines. Why can't you make a mental measuring machine? Tell you what, you can. Tell you what, you can make as many as you like. Tell you what, the more that you can make, the more you find that you can do with them. How many ways you can measure yourself determines the depth of your consciousness. And if you can't measure yourself on purpose, you can measure yourself by engineered interaction with that which you know would theoretically take you in the direction you won't go on your own. And if you trust the process enough, you'll have the courage to remain outside your reactions to things that cause you to be probably uncomfortable, to the point where you're willing to accept things to be true that you don't believe for the purpose of knowing what's on this person's Pokemon card, right? It's the little description at the bottom of the card that tells you about the card. It's not about you. It's not about people who play with Pokemon cards. That would be boring. Thanks for buying Pokemon cards and every little thing. Hey, you're the real hero here. Like, that's not why you buy those things. You buy those to see this one lives in the red jungle and believes that corn is sacred. Okay, then. All right. That's why he's got all that corn on his outfit. Well, that makes more sense now. And then this other one here who likes volcanoes and walks on the beach, but I don't know, is a secret fisherman or something. I don't know. I'm pulling blanks here with I've used a lot of metaphors. They do run out. It's like the box of tissues ran out here. So the point is, anything that you can ask yourself why it makes you feel a certain way compared to how you feel a different way. The more you can understand that, the more you can expand that, because it's like a rubber band. Wave addition happens no matter what your amplitude is. So that means if you learn something that gives you bigger range, you get to keep that. You can still run into more people who have different ways and add that even further, and add that even further, and add that even further. Why? Because that's what you're trying to do. And you understand how it works. The whole wave has little pieces of it that are true, that they understand from a specific perspective, because the goal isn't to understand which one is true. The goal is to understand what everybody thinks is true well enough that you can interact with those people in ways that will make them useful to everybody, including themselves. If that's the goal, then convincing one that one is this and one is that is futile and basically the equivalent of ego masturbation. If the goal is to do good, then the goal needs to be shared understanding that can be agreed upon from specific perspectives that everyone says are fair and that are inviolate. Everything else takes care of itself after that, because everyone has the same goal. And when everyone has the same goal, everyone wants what's good for the goal. You keep it on task by enforcing that which makes the goal sacred. That's why Bitcoin is going to stick around. You can't print more of it. Everybody who's tried to change it has been trying to change that, and they've failed. As long as they don't change that, Bitcoin will not fail, because it's removed the mechanism by which currency fails, which is human manipulation. It needs to have the value it does. You can't influence that. It's inviolate, or the system breaks, which they do. So that's the lecture on cognitive superposition. That's how ideas can become a better understanding of the self, because you understand yourself well enough to understand how you grow by interacting with other people, because they're providing something you don't have, but they're willing to teach it to you if you're willing and able to communicate with them a sincere desire to understand. So any questions?
Well, statement.
Okay, go ahead, Duncan. This
What
is your first lecture, right?
Huh?
Was this your first lecture, full lecture?
Yeah, fully, yeah.
Okay, I want to hear from you.
Now, I really like this because I mean, you had many good points, especially with the whole concept of the superposition. You know, you have like you're on your. I see it behind you, but you see it in front of you.
Duncan, can you give your background before you go into superposition? Can you share with people why you can talk about superposition with more authority than I can?
I think I understand what you say, but as you were saying, no, you know, and I'm using your graphs that are behind you, but they're on your computer, the waves, in a sense, you know, you got 1 point, point A, point B, you, them, that
Yeah.
interaction between the two of you makes that wave.
Yes.
Then as you triangulate or in order to triangulate that, you remove yourself from your point, bring yourself out here, and now you see yourself and them and the reaction of the wave, and allows you to triangulate and actually see what you would give the oh shoot, I just had it out. I don't know.
Well, I can unify that actually. This is the separation between logic and emotion. And this is the reason that people don't understand logic equals emotion is
Right.
to
And it's
remove
vectoring
yourself.
is
to
the word
remove
I was
your-
looking for.
Yep. So
I'll
to
catch
remove
you guys
yourself-
next time.
Thanks, Tim. This is, do you have 30 seconds? Do you have 30 seconds?
Yeah, I got 30. I got 30.
Okay. Okay. So here's the reason between the difference between logic and emotion is logic is strictly being able to observe yourself outside the interaction. Emotion is strictly being able to experience the interaction between the two. Logic and emotion are the same thing when you understand that one is the observation of it from an outside perspective while simultaneously being able to reference each individual moment of sensation throughout the interaction of those two individuals done.
Yeah, that's what I refer to as triangulating the vectors.
Was it worth it?
Oh, yes.
No, Tony, he was the one who gave me more time. Was it worth it?
Yeah, it makes
Okay.
sense. I like it.
Then I don't feel bad for asking for it. Take care.
All right, I'll see you guys
See you
online.
later, Tony.
Hey, we got a thumbs up.
Yep. Yeah, so there was a few reactions there. All of them were very good. He's a very good audience, very generous audience. Duncan, did you have anything else? You kind of got side cut because he had to cut.
Yeah. When you seeing yourself, and that's that third point, and by triangulating the position and the reactions, that's where you get the vector,
Mm-hmm.
to where it creates and actually reviews the wave in itself.
And then if you have enough of those interactions with enough different people and
You
experience
gain
enough
that
diversity, you gain awareness of how to produce the variation without the interaction.
Correct, which is
And
the
that's the equivalent of increasing the dimension of the idea. You go from a point
exactly, yeah.
to a line, to a square, to a cube, to a tesseract, and so on. When you have that moment where something automatically just fills itself in for everything that's close to it, you've gone up a dimension of thought. That's how ideas grow.
Yep.
A point
And I
has no
really-
self-awareness.
Right, and I really love your outlook because it's making me also see it at a much simpler way.
That was my goal, was everything was too complex. I couldn't determine relevance. Because of my high anxiety, it also increased my processing speed to compensate for my extremely narrow vision. So I had my brain, which means number one, it is possible to increase your brain speed because I've done that, because that was one of the things you have to do when you study learning. Part of studying learning is how to learn faster. Part of that is learning how to increase your brain speed. If you want to do that, start watching videos and keeping track of as many details as you can, like football stadiums, etc. And then when you can do that and keep track of 10 or 15 things, put the video on 1.1 speed, and then 1 1/4 and 1 1/2 and 2. And what you'll do is you'll slowly stretch your ability to measure things more quickly because you desperately are focused on wanting to do that. And your brain is learning how to carry over what it learned previously because you're practicing a compression of the process in little chunks at a time by slowly speeding it up. It's how athletes train. Your brain can train the same way when it comes to speed. If you know
My
the
wife
drills.
was a speed reader, and that's something I've never been able to figure out because of my dyslexia.
One thing I wanted to get on camera, because I plan to turn this series of lectures into a video course that people can use when it's cleaned up and presented for public consumption, is you're talking about quantum physics, and I wanted you to give your experience in experiencing quantum physics, so it gives a little bit of weight to when you're talking about the concept. Like, you're not just a guy who watched a YouTube video. What did you do with quantum physics before you came here?
Well, I was an engineer first in back in the 80s when I first started to get my upper education. I could go all the way back to the 70s in that respect when I was, well, actually all the way back to the 60s. 68, I was one of the first male candy stripers.
Okay.
And that's what pissed my dad off.
I
Boys
can
can't be
imagine.
Boys can't
Okay.
be nurses. You got to be a mechanic. You got to be the tough guy.
Well, it was just a phase, he said, I guess.
That's what he was saying. And then I
Yeah.
became a nurse in the military
Okay.
in the early 70s. And then when I had that accident in 79, I had already been to school, out of the military, gone to school, become a nurse, went to teaching nursing assistants to start training the candy stripers to become certified nursing assistants, so that the nurses could trust that if they asked this a nursing assistant to do something, that they would be able to do it because they know how. So, you know, that was an excellent concept. In 1985, it did end up actually becoming a reality, you know, to where now it's national.
Yeah.
And it's actually a career.
What happened next?
But then the accident in 79, and I was passenger, and I don't remember who was driving, but because I was asleep, I know I had to be a friend, because I don't sleep well or do well with cars if I'm not driving.
Yeah.
I trust it. Always,
Me neither,
I've always
me
been
neither.
like that.
I have passenger anxiety too.
Yeah. And well, with you being on the spectrum, you definitely got that anxiety. You understand that.
It's just a high perceptive of danger that
Yeah.
most of the
But I
time
was
doesn't
actually
matter, but
sleeping.
doesn't go unnoticed to you.
Yeah, and I was sleeping with my head against the window. And I think that's why I have such neck problems now too.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much ever since then. But when he hit some pea gravel on the road as he was going around a turn, and
Uh-huh.
literally the car slingshotted into this big steel pole.
Okay.
And of course, right into my window. It hit right there at my door. And because my head was against the window, that pole hit my head doing 80 miles an hour.
Yeah.
So why I didn't die, and the doctors even told me, no, your head should have exploded like a watermelon as soon as you hit that accident. Well, my seat and everything there in the part of the car was back into a crumpled mess of metal in the back
Yeah.
seat.
Wow.
I should have been inside of that metal, but somehow I bounced out. And how I become unattached to the car and everything, you know, beyond me.
Yeah.
Because, you know, now I'm locked into the dashboard and the back of his seat, you know, locked in thinking, well, if he's going to regain control of the car, it's going to be without me on his lap.
Yeah.
And the next thing I remembered was the car was stopped, but he was outside of the car.
Okay.
And not in the driver's seat. So apparently this is a few seconds, and I just don't have any memory of that part. But I remembered him saying, you know, you got to get out, it's going to blow, it's going to blow. And I'm thinking, oh shit. So I went to turn to sit in my seat, and that's when I found out there was no seat there to sit in. I just hit the ground and ended up rolling out of the way from the car, and I just took off running across. It was out in the middle of a cornfield, and of course the car blew up.
Wow.
And then I had to find the place, but you know, I had amnesia for a while, and it took 3 months before I started remembering who I was. Oh, that's right, I was going to see my parents. So my dad, that's where I'm going. So I ended up back home, and
So did they think you died, or they didn't know where you were?
they didn't know I was even coming. You know,
So they
knew I was
moved-
in
Oh, okay. There wasn't like you weren't missing from anybody.
Right.
I understand.
You know, because I was traveling from my home to there, but they didn't know I was coming.
Right. They had nobody knew you were gone. It was just a weird hole of nobody was looking for you.
Well, my wife knew I was driving.
Yeah.
But oh, that can't be right.
Ooh, did I shake something loose?
Yeah, you did. That's
So
weird.
I was asking about fuck, what was I asking about?
Wow, I just realized my timing might be off on this.
So what was I asking?
It had
What
to
was that?
be
I can't remember what I was asking.
what triggered was when I was thinking of the time, because in 79 I was divorced. So
Right. But what triggered the thinking about that was what I said. So I'm trying to remember what that was, so I could trigger it again.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, it was right before that. I was
Yeah, went
questioning.
from
I was-
where I was in the car and I was headed home, versus
I said that
be gone. Yeah.
I said that nobody knew you were missing. Like that
Yeah.
was what I was curious about. Like, was there anybody who had called police to look for you? Was your absence noted? Were you declared dead because you were just dropped off the world? For
Not
3
really,
months?
just because, like I say, they knew I was traveling. I could have been just stopped somewhere
Yeah.
and or whatever, but my family didn't know I was coming.
And then you said your wife.
Yeah, so
That
this
was what
had to
made
have
you.
been before 79, actually, where all these years I've been thinking it was 79.
So you got thrown out of
Explain
time.
why I can't remember between 1977 and 1979.
Your memory got thrown out of time. That's cool. Can you pick it up and put it back where it goes? You have that ability?
That's what you just triggered. You know,
Cool.
because if I was saying, you know, because I knew my wife went to New York with our baby.
Yeah. Take your time with it. Take your time
And,
with it. Don't rush through it. This is
This has been going through my head every day
Yeah.
for the past 30 years.
yeah. No, I mean the feeling. It's gonna trigger feelings. Just
Oh yeah.
just take it slow. You won't get overwhelmed. That's all. In doses.
So anyway, I'll have to work on that date
Yeah.
period. But I remember my wife went to New York to see her parents with the baby, and I was driving with a friend to go see his parents, and then we're going to see my parents, and then we're going to go up to New York to see her parents.
Okay.
You know, and I'd be there a month after she got there, and I know it was in early fall, and she was going to be there. You know, that we would have expected to meet up around Thanksgiving.
So what job did you have when you were doing that?
Oh, yeah, that was teaching nursing and
Okay. Okay. Got it.
working emergency crew.
So what got you out of nursing?
The accident. I
Okay.
had no memory of it.
So then when you had to go back to something else, what happened?
Well, that's when my dad decided, well, you're one of the boys, you ended up going there. And at that point, you know, shortly after that, that's when I found out I was divorced, because I didn't even know at that time, you know, much about it. Then I was divorced and pretty much, you know, okay, fine, you know, I'll just continue my life here.
Yeah. Yeah. You got shook up a lot and it was getting rough back.
My dad had me to where I've just got to become one of the guys of the family. You know,
So-
all
so
the
they-
men in the family are mechanics or
Okay.
engineers or stuff like that. So I started working at the airport and got into aviation and stuff like that, which we all worked out there at that time. And
So you went
and that's
to-
when I went to school and
Went to
became
school
an
for
engineer,
Okay. What kind of engineering?
mechanical engineer at first.
Mechanical. So you building
I wanted to
things.
get
Designing and building?
electrical.
Yeah, designing and building, right?
designing buildings, machines, which is what I really got into, was the machines.
Do you know anything
Yeah.
about CNC machines?
Oh yeah.
I've been having some trouble with mine. Maybe I could text you some questions off. That would
Yeah,
be-
that's what I was asking earlier. Remember I mentioned something about
Oh, I might have.
code?
I kind of went off the radar for the chat thing once I
Yeah.
started the lecture, but that's cool.
When you
We'll
started
talk
that,
about
then I
that.
said that no, we got to get back on track.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you because I got distracted myself. You were
No,
talking
that's
about,
not a problem there, because yeah, I'd gladly talk about that. I mean, it's been a while.
so you did
I'm sure
engineering, and then I was trying to get you to where the quantum physics. So how did we get from
Right.
engineering
Well,
to quantum physics?
And from 1980 till 2000, I was living in Michigan, you know, having my family and whatnot,
Michigan here, yep.
and worked out at Willow Run Airport.
Okay.
And lived anywhere from Dexter to, well, I lived in Jackson one time for a little while,
Okay.
mostly in Dexter, Ann Arbor mostly. Both my girls were born in Ann Arbor, and I lived downriver Detroit.
Okay.
And believe it or not, there's times where I think I felt safer walking in the streets of downriver Detroit area, south side of Detroit,
Yeah.
than I have in Ann Arbor with all the white people.
There's a complicated history there.
It
Yeah.
is, you know, and but yet everybody, weren't you afraid to go down there? No, actually, I felt more relaxed, more comfortable. You know, I was
Okay.
accepted there, even though I was the only white boy in town. I was accepted,
Play it straight.
Because I
You
didn't
usually get the
judge-
pass. Yeah.
and they didn't judge me.
Nope. You don't
You
judge.
know,
You don't get
that's-
judged. Easy.
Let's go to Ann Arbor, you don't get nothing but judged by the white people. You
Yeah,
know,
true. Kind of congregate there, but they're young. It's a congregation of young
you're
people.
up in the Flint area, right?
I'm closer to like between Detroit and Ann Arbor, somewhere that area.
Dearborn?
Ish. Yeah, I'm like kind of that little.
Yeah, that's the
Right.
whole, the outer Detroit vicinity. But yeah, it's all pretty much the same. you know, a lot there except for Ann Arbor. That's where it's almost all white.
So I gotta go soon, but I don't want to cut you off.
Anyway, yeah. But when I came back here is when, well, I continued a lot of schooling there at University of Michigan too. But then I came back here, and that's when I got back into medicine.
Okay.
And my new wife now, you know, we got married in 2001, and that's then her mom had an accident, so that's what brought me to back to Wisconsin with my wife. And she goes, well, I couldn't get any job in engineering or anything like that. So, and literally the only job that was available at the time willing to pay me was they would train me and, you know, get me back into nursing, and I would be able to make $20 some an hour back in
That's good money.
2001.
That was good money.
Well, hey, that's nice. You know, I'll go for that.
All right.
Within a week or two, I'm sitting there thinking, oh my God, I know this.
Mm.
I used to teach this, you know, and everything came flashing back so rapidly. Like I say,
Yeah.
within a couple of months, all of my medical training and everything come back to my memory and
Very
everything.
good.
And I said, well, that's excellent. So I continued with that. And I worked in for nurses PRN while I went to school here at the university in Madison, Wisconsin. And that's when I started getting into physics, and then physiology, physics, physiology. That's physics. And I then go, wait a minute, I can't just stop here. I got to go farther. So that's the thing I know, I'm going into quantum physics. Well, I went to theoretical physics first, and then I got into quantum physics, which worked really well with my physiology, you know, because physiology is the nature of how everything from the molecules of the earth creating the human body as it is physically.
Hmm.
You know, it's the study of the physics nature.
After this lecture, because I don't want to cut short for where you're going, remind me to ask you to explain that connection to me, because that sounds fascinating. So file that away for future conversation.
Okay, yeah.
I
Well,
wanna
yeah,
know that.
it was kind of a personal connection, but
Yeah,
because I wanted to learn more.
yeah.
And the best thing was, and my wife was very supportive and kept pushing me, go to school. I mean, I'd be working 8 to 10 hours a day, you know, in the machine shops and whatnot, and you know, designing things, you know, working at my computer skills and my engineering skills, Michigan MPI, Michigan Precision Instruments
Okay.
is where I worked. And then all of a sudden I got it back into physics and all that. And then I just continued. And 2012, I ended up with cancer, and everything got stopped. And well, you know, kind of making no money or anything what I would have loved to have had back then, but now I'm so disabled that I can't hardly do anything, and life goes on. You know, I got to live off of Social Security, and it sucks. I don't know, someday maybe I can do more, but you know, the keeping the brain on track, like you said, is very hard to do, as you know, and it's so easy to get off track, and you know, because oh yeah, that's exciting. Yeah, this is it. You know, wait a minute, what?
It's all exciting. It's all relevant.
I don't know. I can't remember.
It's because you get deprived of the sensation of novelty, because everything you observe becomes
Especially when we were
infinitely
young.
dull.
Yeah.
Because it's just too well understood, and it becomes boring, and existence becomes boring because people confuse novelty with interesting. And what they should be doing is looking at what is there and figuring out interesting ways to use it. Completely different use of energy. One is just natural.
All I want to do is learn, because I can do that really well.
One is natural talent, and the other is a training. And if you do both, you can't fail.
I never got along people very well.
So did you end up getting you got a degree in one of those things, didn't you?
Well, both engineering, nursing, physiology, and physics.
Okay. How far did you take your physics degree?
Well, all the way till into my PhD.
Really? You had to write a thesis of some kind then. What was your topic?
Right. I combined 3 different subjects into my thesis, which was I had to actually apply for, but they did accept it, and that was the concept of chemical reaction between the use, abuse, and the chemical reaction of physiology of the body with the use and abuse of illicit and illicit drugs, using specifically cocaine or codeine, marijuana, LSD, and cocaine. And, you know, because they're all kind of 4 different categories.
So what fields were you combining and what sort of accreditation did it give you once you achieved that?
Physiology and physics, quantum physics.
Yeah. So you combined in a paper that was accepted as sufficient to prove a mastery of your subjects. So did you prove mastery of 2 subjects at the same time with this?
Physiology and physics.
So both of them had to agree that your reasoning was sound and was interchangeable with each other from an outside expert perspective.
Right.
This was your idea.
Right. And this was basically to prove to them how that also both groups kind of fed into each other. And, you know, the truth of one was also the truth of the other, even though some people would thought it was the opposite.
Do you have a copy of
it's
this
what
paper?
proves it.
Do you have a copy of this paper?
Oh, somewhere. I haven't seen it in quite a few years.
Is it published somewhere? Can I find it? I want to read it. I'm
I
fascinated by the
I
topic.
don't know. I don't think so.
Oh
I don't
my
think
God.
I ever actually published it.
Okay, if it turns up, I'm infinitely curious because I want to read it. I want to read it. I'm very curious about
But
the
yeah,
5.
anyway, you know, come to find out that with all the only information really that was really available for the LSD aspect was what the government tested. And
Well,
stuff.
it's the things that you assumed to be true that I'm very interested in. Your initial conditions, your hypotheses, and the methods you pursued them, because then I can trace those methods along with their direction and actually map it as you have. And if it's a dead spot in my
I was more
understanding,
into wanting to prove that the body reacts to certain elements,
yes,
including your zinc, magnesium, potassium, and psyllium are like 4 major ingredients that your body has to, and carbon.
yeah,
You know, those 5 major ingredients that your body, every single cell in your body has to have.
yeah.
You know, it's not a matter of, well, you can do without this one or this, but you got to have it. Boy, no, you have to have the proper amount. Too much of any one of them will kill you. Not enough of any one of them will kill you. You know, my point was to prove that this has to be in a perfect balance in order to make the perfectly healthy individual. And
So
it also leads,
you tied that to the quantum. That is
which is
fascinating.
got into a lot of the studies of the DNA and everything, because your DNA is made of it. It's these fats and acids, fatty acids and stuff. It's actually what creates the DNA and the nucleic molecules. And without this, you know, no one could understand. But, you know, when I kind of pointed out that, you know, this is how the body reacts. This is what creates the body. This is how the body was created.
I'm gonna leave everybody cliffhanging because I gotta run, but that was incredible. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah,
that.
we'll definitely have to get into that a little more.
Yeah, text me offline, and if you unlock something new, I'll give a lecture on it, and then maybe you'll have things to chime in
Maybe
on.
we can work together on it and see
I'd
what
be
we
happy
come up
to.
with information.
I always love a good exploration. So thanks for watching, everybody, and yeah, I'll invite everyone to the next one too. It's every Tuesday,
Sure, yeah.
same time slot.
Definitely glad to, like I say, get a part of this. And, you know, if nothing else, I can definitely be an official verification that what you're saying is definitely viable.
Yeah, because I throw a lot of science out there, and
You really do. And
I just got a bachelor's in physics. Like and it was a while ago, and I just watch YouTube videos on it now to stay current. So I'm pulling from imagery a lot more, and the understanding of relationships
that'll be with you forever.
than anything else. So it's the relationships that I understand, not necessarily the mechanics of them. But if you're going to operate inside a thing on that level, your understanding of those relationships needs to be extremely precise because you don't have a verification measure.
Right.
So that's kind of what I have learned to fine tune is how do I know if I'm in the right place?
And again, that's where it comes right back down to the same point of pixels.
Yep.
You're one of millions of pixels. And you want this pixel and this pixel, and you draw that vector between, which creates the wave.
Yep.
You know, between the two of the reactions and all that. You know, it's And that's physics in itself too. That's quantum physics.
Well, thanks for fact checking me, providing some science verification here. PhD, multiple PhD.
Actually, yeah, and that's what I did. I
I'm
went
humbled by that.
20 some years.
So thank you, Duncan. You get the gold star, like lifetime intelligence achievement award for this lecture.
Well, I
That's
tried, but-
impressive. It's only once though,
What I
because
do was learn.
but next time I'm going to pretend like it didn't happen. But for today, it's your honor. And
Yeah, okay.
please-
Well, I appreciate
please-
that. But plus, one of the things too is I still do a lot of go into the MA medical journals
Yeah.
where they put stuff in, or in the physics journals and stuff like that. And I'll upvote them or downvote them. I actually can work with them.
I'll give you
Very
access
true.
to some of the earlier lectures and passwords for them. I speak a lot about the amygdala and how it influences perspective. I think you'd resonate with that as well. And you could
Yeah,
also
there's a
fact check,
chemical-
given your medical understanding, you could fact check that too. I would love
That
that.
and there's the chemical respect between that.
Yes.
Actually,
So I'm going
all the way
completely
down
off
to the
of,
electromagnetic.
I'm going off of completely observational relationship understanding without understanding of mechanism. And I'm assuming that my previous understandings are true to create new ones. So to have someone who could actually fill in
That's
those
what I'm
gaps.
finding is, that's the way you come about these is just phenomenal to me.
I learned how to learn. I learned how to triangulate relevance.
Right.
That's the Achilles heel of the autistic. The autistic can go anywhere, but the
Well,
autistic
yeah,
can't
that's true.
decide where to go.
I have a lot of autistics in my family.
So, but
Daughter,
anyways,
son.
master of the 30-minute goodbye. But anyways, this time it's goodbye. We'll see you next time. Thank you, and God bless.
You